Hey guys, welcome to my first ever top 10 video. I will be going over the top 10 mythicals in Mythrel. Starting off at number 10, we have Gemstone of Dead, a good control card in a meta where control isn't good. As a standalone card, it does something that no other card in this game can do so far, which is just outright kill an opponent creature. Control as an archetype, however, holds this card back by being so awful. Swift being so prominent and blocker being not prominent really butchers this card's playability. However, once control sees more play, you can sure as heck expect to see Gemstone of Dead more often. Moving on to number 9, we have Knight of the Realm, another card that suffers from control-itis. As a standalone card, it's alright. It's a 4 mana 4/6, which is really good stats and blocker. However, you would never run this in a mid-range deck or in an aggressive style deck, because it just doesn't fulfill your game plan as well as other cards that you would already want to run. So, not a bad card by any means, it just doesn't fit anywhere right now because the place where it does fit isn't great. Now moving on to number 8, we have Eye of Protection, a really good card. I even put it as an S tier card in the 0 to 2 mana tier list. This card just does so much. However, it doesn't really have a specific game plan that it promotes. So it can't really go higher on this list because it doesn't really slot into a deck exclusively. It kind of is just an all-around good card, which is great to have, and if you do unbox this, you will use it in all of your decks. It just doesn't really make one deck specifically better, or any decks at all really. It just is a good card that you run. With that being said, number 8 is a really good spot for it to be because the cards above it just promote game plans better than Eye of Protection ever will. Now at number 7, we have a King's Shield, just a really solid, early game card. It provides defense, which is pretty hard to find besides Egg, and it does it really well. For 2 mana, it gives 5 health, which is insane. It provides you with value trades. It can provide you with just surviving a Thea or a Jin trade. It just does so much for 2 mana that it belongs in this list. However, it does get beaten by its counterpart, a King's Sword, which we will touch on a bit later. Moving on to number 6, we have Miyu Magi, an exceptional early game card in a meta where the early game doesn't really exist. It has the text of Scroll with the stats of Princess. If you have a copy of this card, I encourage you to run it immediately because it just does so much for 2 mana. Moving on to the top 5, we have Elwyn, Elven Oracle. This card is just Elven Archer but with Ward, but who doesn't like Ward? This allows you to trade up into Jin, go face with some extra protection, or just a solid tempo play on turn 3. This card does everything really well, and it really encourages faster style decks to flourish because this just does so much for 3 mana. Heading on down to 4th place, we have a King's Sword, the best equipment hands down. It does so much for 2 mana, and it just applies so much early game pressure or late game pressure, mid game pressure, whatever pressure you want. This card can accomplish that. It is insanely good, and if you have a copy, I encourage you to run it immediately. Heading over to 3rd place, we have Elven Shieldmaster, the best blocker minion in the game by far, and just a really solid minion in any style of deck that you want to run. Aggressive style, boom. Mid-range style, boom. Control style, boom, but don't play control. This card just does so much for 3 mana that it would be criminal to have this and not run it in your deck. Heading down to 2nd place, we have Elven Dragon Rider, an 8 mana card for 6 mana. There is really not much else that needs to be said. This is just a really solid card. It is a stat reduction for the price of like 40 bucks. This card is really good, and if you aren't running it, give it to me because I sure as heck will. You all knew this was coming. At number 1, we have Gemstone of Mana, the best card in the entire game. This card makes the non-existent early game into pressure central. You can play an Elven Archer on turn 1, and you will just outright win because of it. There are so many ways that this card can be utilized that it's quite literally impossible to fathom them all. This card just encourages so many different archetypes and so many different combos that it belongs in first place. If you have this card and you aren't running it, you are doing a disservice to your country and to this game. Do not, and I repeat, do not run this card. Please, if you have it, for the love of God, either trade it to someone that will or play it yourself. But yeah, number 1, Gemstone of Mana by miles.